Masters of innovation.
Looking towards the future with anticipation, raising up the technological conversation from the east to the west and all across the nation. If knowledge is the cure, then we got the medication. We're the masters of innovation, the masters of innovation. We're the masters of innovation, the masters of innovation.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Masters of Innovation, hitting you up with the cutting-edge knowledge you need to evolve into the future we all live in today. I'm Garrett Wagner, your entrepreneurial CPA, here to guide you along this journey, and I'm joined by the man, the legend, the man who got dressed up for today, Joe Brunsman, CLP Brokers. Joe, are you excited to talk about the Dirty Dozen today?
Let's do it. I thought this was going to be like a Quentin Tarantino episode, but turns out it's a little more depressing than that.
You know,
but
Joe,
it can still be funny.
We're not fancy enough to get Quentin Tarantino as like a guest host. Okay, FYI. Instead, we're talking about the Dirty Dozen, which is kind of like you said, sounds cool. Do you want to explain to everybody what the Dirty Dozen is before we get started?
Yeah, certainly. So the Dirty Dozen is put out every year by the IRS. And I think in previous years, so I think they've changed it up this year. In previous years, it was more about the way that people would, get scammed with various tax scenarios or, how to get out of paying taxes primarily, things that were just blatantly not true, or other ways that people, kind of got swindled out of money in the tax charity area. But this year, I think they've expanded it. And a lot of really coronavirus related or specific tax schemes on there. So pretty interesting this year, actually.
Yeah, this year the IRS actually said, once again, this is taxpayer funded money. We're kind of joking about this, the people that spend their time doing this. This year it focuses on scams that target taxpayers. Because like you said, in the past it was more, hey, things that people might do to scam the IRS. Mm-hmm. This year it's all about everybody out there. It's about your clients, about what's going to hit your clients up, cause them to lose their life savings, their fortune, whatever it is. The IRS did say, Joe, coming up though, they'll do a next press release focusing on illegal tax schemes and techniques businesses and individuals use unlawfully to reduce their tax liabilities. We can talk about that in the future. Today, it's all about targeting taxpayers, our poor clients that get hit up. So without further ado, we're going to break into this couple-part episode. Number one, Joe, Dirty Dozen, tax scams, drum roll, phishing.
Yes. The evil phishing that gets, it was already around anyways. But now, you've got people that are working from home. They're stressed out. There's, say an overabundance of knowledge in the COVID area, not all of which may be particularly valid in the scientific arena. And so there's just, millions of COVID-related phishing emails going out to people. So it's everything from, COVID-19 dashboards to, download this little widget and it'll tell you, through social distancing and tracking, mechanisms, if anybody in your nearby vicinity has, contracted the COVID-19, and all of that has malicious malware in it. So people are just getting their identity stolen left, right, and center, having their banking accounts drained, everything in between. So it's pretty terrible.
And a big takeaway on the phishing side is for you to remember your clients, the IRS will never contact taxpayers via email. Whether it's about their tax bill, the refund, the economic stimulus payments, whether there's one round or two, whatever it is, the IRS is never, ever going to contact people by email. 100% of the time, those are scams. Those are false. Avoid them and just don't do it. It's kind of like, Joe, we talk about this, just cybersecurity best practices. Phishing is always a concern. Watch out for it. Be wary of fake emails and websites all the time.
Oh, constantly.
Number two, another one me and Joe just personally really, this appeals to us. We might might get into this area someday. Number two, fake charities. Fake charities. Joe, what do we got to watch out for when it comes to fake charities?
So there's a ton of, I will say scammers who are putting themselves forward as fake charities, many of which are coronavirus related, COVID-19 related. There's various different, ways that they're trying to display themselves to part people with their money. But the IRS actually has a database that you can go search. If you're approached by, somebody who says they're part of a charity, well, you can actually go and look and determine if they truly are a charity with tax exempt status. So, my mother's grandmother, who is 94, she gets, I have to say, like 10 letters a day from various Catholic charities. Some of which seem rather questionable, some of which I've heard of. But, it's just to say, like, obviously there are probably millions of charities out there in the world. We haven't heard of all of them. So, hey, maybe you have heard of a charity and you're like, hey, this sounds like a great idea. I want to feed people in my local community because I see that people are going hungry. A lot of people are out of work and I have some extra cash. I can donate to that. But, just do yourself a favor. Do just a little bit of background before you end up, parting ways with your hard-earned cash and it's just going to some random guy who's going to abscond with it.
And a good rule of thumb in this, be wary of charities that want to get Bitcoin paid only. Could be an easy red flag. The other part, Joe, it ties back to phishing we just talked about. It's not just a fake charity, like a non-real charity never heard of before. Sometimes it's like a bogus website that looks like a legitimate charity. We'll pick Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They can create a fake Mothers Against Drunk Driving website at just a slightly different URL to try to lure you in. And then, hey, just, donate to Mad Today. Click here to put your credit card information. It looks so real, but it's part of that phishing scam combined with a fake charity. All to trick you are your hard-earned money. So just kind of good takeaway here. Remind yourself, remind your clients, watch out for those fake charities. And this is all good stuff to remind your clients, whether it's an email, a podcast, a newsletter, whatever it is, to stay on top of these things. So, Joe, we got through the first two. Not too bad. We haven't been arrested yet. No one's come knocking on our door. So we're getting number 3. This is another one that Joe would probably get into himself if he had a little more time in his day. Threatening impersonator phone calls.
Yeah, so I've actually gotten a number of these personally. So has my wife. So these are definitely going around. And kind of the general laydown of this is you get a phone call and it's something to the effect of, you have to pay us money or bad things are going to happen. And that conversation can go various different ways. I got one actually on my wife's phone. This was maybe 2-3 days ago at this point. And it was some lady with a thick Indian accent who said her name was Ashley, who said that my wife's iCloud account had been hacked and that she worked for Apple. And for a small payment, she could go in and revoke the access of whoever it was that had hacked into my wife's iCloud account, and everything would be fine and no authorities would get involved. But, we had to take care of this right now. So thankfully, I kept her on the phone for a solid 45 minutes because I knew this was a scam. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with her. But at the same time, the more effort and time she puts into me, the less time she could put into somebody who could potentially fall for this scam. And so the way the conversation actually ended, because my wife actually does not have an iCloud account, she has no Apple devices, was I told her that I actually traced her phone call. I know where she works, that I found out her IP address, and that I was a former investigator for the FTC cybercrime unit. And my former colleagues would be visiting her and her boss very, very soon. And then she hung up the phone on me.
You flipped the script out of there, huh?
Oh, I did. Oh, and she was getting so frustrated. She was getting so frustrated. And it was, yes, your wife, Elizabeth. And I was like, can you spell that for me? And so she spells the name correctly. And I'm like, wait, I think a letter was off. Can you spell it again? So I had her spell my wife's name at least 5 or 6 times. I had her use, the phonetic alphabet. I mean, every possible way I could keep her on the phone. I got to give it credit, give her credit. She was diligent, and she hung in there for 45 minutes.
She stuck with you.
Until she legitimately thought that I was like, former FTC investigator. And then she hung up the phone very quickly.
But this is part of that big robocall thing we're all dealing with today.
Mm-hmm.
We all get a massive amount of robocalls every single day. They're getting smarter, more automated. I had one today, Joe, kind of speaking of that. You could tell it was the automated number, pick it up, say hello. And it sounds like a real person going through their speech. And I kind of just start talking afterwards. Oh, this sounds super. Oh, it's healthcare. They want to help me save money. Oh, this sounds super interesting. I'm paying way too much on healthcare. Well, I can. And eventually they just hung up on me because I think it was like the AI was waiting to hear like a few key words to take it to a live person. And the fact that I just kept talking, they're just like, this guy's not. So I didn't get to have my chance to have that kind of like, let's keep him on the phone for 45 minutes discussing healthcare. They cut me off the pass. So big takeaway on the phone calls, remind yourselves, remind the clients, Harris never calls and asks for money. We all know nowadays, Harris is way too busy to do most things. They definitely can't answer the phone, and they're not going to pick up the phone and call anybody because they're just too busy. Mm-hmm. So a whole bunch of more numbers to hit, block, and ignore. All right, Joe, we've made it to the first 3. Not too bad. We're doing good.
Good.
Dirty dozen, though. That's a lot. You ready to get to number 4?
Let's do it.
The excitement builds, right? All right, number 4. Another one we're probably going to be, social media scams. Social media scams.
They're scammy. Kind of a general rule here, never trust anything you see on social media, regardless of what it is. Never trust anything you see on social media.
Don't trust Joe Brunsman.
That's right. Don't trust me. Don't trust me.
Figment of your imagination.
I could actually be AI. That's coming up here. But the gist of it is, there was actually, I think, an article just in the BBC recently where they were talking about how a guy was, I believe, using LinkedIn to actually connect with people who had access to like large troves of personally identifiable information, and then somehow was like using that as the stepping stone to commit, like wide scale identity fraud and theft. And so, kind of just like as a baseline, don't trust anybody on social media. If you don't know who they are, you don't need to be giving out your home address, your telephone number, definitely not your bank account number, any sort of, payment card information, anything like that. Just, kind of the whole idea, like don't talk to strangers that everybody told us as a kid. Just don't talk to strangers, right? Just stay away. Anybody can impersonate anybody on the internet. So just, play it safe and just avoid that kind of stuff.
All right, so social media scams, number 4. Number 5, we're moving on, refund theft. And this includes not just your regular refund. This year was a big impact as well in the economic impact payment, or EIP for acronyms, just to keep things more fun and easy. So Joe, what's the kind of biggest takeaway for all of us CPAs out there to remind our clients on refund theft?
One, I would just say like there's a bunch of different varieties on how this can actually occur. So probably the biggest thing I'd recommend for a CPA firm is actually just, acknowledging and informing, educating your clients that refund theft is occurring. And it can look really legitimate. And let me kind of qualify that statement. So there were a bunch of nursing homes, I believe, that were accused or alleged to have taken refund checks from their elderly patients, saying that, they were in arrears for payments for one thing or another. So, really kind of anybody, if anybody, thinks they're going to take their refund check, or there's a different mechanism to get that refund check, or someone can get you a bigger refund check, probably going to be a scam. I'd say, definitely, hey, CPAs, educate your clients, just offer to them that if something like that occurs, if it sounds really legitimate, they should always, really go to their CPA and kind of go through those channels first and just kind of ask some fundamental questions. Have somebody else who's financially literate it's kind of that backstop before you make potentially a very expensive decision.
And that's another reason why it's good to remind all of our clients, hey, file your refund sooner. The longer you wait, the more time you give somebody else to try and get a fake return in there and divert your refund amount. So don't wait, file your return, make everybody's life easier. And then, Joe, we're moving on to number 6. We're halfway through. We've already touched base on this, though. Senior fraud. No big surprise there. Big rise in fraud to senior citizens. You already kind of talked about in the nursing homes and other areas like that. So, Joe, are you surprised at all that senior fraud made the list?
Not in the slightest, actually. So my grandmother, as a matter of fact, called me a couple of weeks ago. And so, I'm chatting with her and I'm like, hey, how's grandpa doing? How's your dog? All that kind of stuff. And then she goes, oh, Joey boy, I got to tell you a funny story. So I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on, Grandma? And she goes, so the other week I got a call and it was really late at night and it woke me up and it was a woman's voice on the other end of the phone. And she said, hey, this is Ann, your daughter-in-law, and I've been arrested and I need $500 to post bail and get out of jail. I made a mistake. I don't want to tell you about it now over the phone because I have to talk to my attorney about it. And this phone call is being recorded, by the police station. But if you could please just send $500, that would be great. And so thankfully my grandmother, who's in her 80s, by this point, Auntie Ann, my Aunt Ann, is a former law enforcement officer. And so Grandma Pat goes, well, why didn't you just show them your badge? And I'm sure they'd let you out of jail then. In which case then the phone immediately hung up on the other end. But, there's all kinds of elderly fraud out there where people are really kind of taking advantage of, people in our society who maybe mentally they're not all there. They're not as sharp as they used to be, or they're really not aware that these scams exist. People that kind of grew up in a different time, really before the internet was prevalent. And, to think that someone would call you from, Nigeria for a scam would just be incomprehensible, because you're like, oh my God, that would cost like $5 a minute in long distance calls. Like no one would call me for $5 a minute. So it's just something that, like, as a CPA firm, obviously you're going to have elderly clients. Some of them are going to be kind of in their twilight years, I guess is maybe the most politically correct way to say that. Just warn them of these scams, warn them that, people are specifically trying to take advantage of them. And just because somebody calls, like, in my case, I legitimately had an Auntie Ann, and, it's very easy for someone to just hop on Facebook, see who your relatives are, or, hop on Twitter, see who you're connected with, look at local tax records or, housing records, whatever the case may be, see who's, living with you, and really make a convincing narrative on how they can try and scam you out of money.
And that you really summed up the end there of that's how a lot of these things work. They're getting smarter. They're not getting smarter necessarily IT wise, they're not doing some big fancy hack. They're using that social media information to just tell a slightly better story than they used to tell. Also with that, my biggest takeaway from that, Joey boy. Should I just start calling you Joey boy?
Do it.
Joey boy. Joey boy here on the latest show is going to talk about how he is a boy named Joey.
Yep. I'm Joey. Joey boy.
That's
Joey boy.
good. So Joe, we made it through 6. I think we're going to pause here and come back with a part 2. That way people can kind of digest this fun, exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, the biggest takeaway is we should stay on top of these. If we're a professional today, it's good to know where the risk lies for our clients, whether we're going to send a big formal letter out, an email, or just in casual conversations with your clients throughout the second half of the year or whatever, to say, hey, are you taking the steps to keep yourself protected? Because we don't want to get that situation where the client calls us and say, oh my God, Joey boy, I just got hacked. I just got taken by, my refund got stolen, senior fraud, social media scam, fake charity, whatever. What can I do? At what point Joey boy says nothing, like it's too late. You want to get to Joey boy before something goes wrong. So Joey boy can take care of you, just like the good boy that he is.
Honestly, I actually get a decent number of phone calls from my CPA firm clients, and they're going, hey, I know that you're like the cyber guy. one of my clients just called me, for example, like one I got a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
He just got, he got scammed out of $25,000. What can he do? Really by that point, kind of the particular fact pattern of the case was that $25,000 that was gone for about a week before he actually realized that he'd been scammed. So by that point, trying to work through the banks and recall money and trace the money, by that point, it was really kind of too far down the line. And unfortunately, personal cyber insurance isn't really a thing yet. So I do the best I can to try and help them with, at that point, it's really like, okay, you're going to report this probably to your local police. There's some national level resources to report it to.
Yeah.
But the probability of you actually getting that money back is almost zero by that point. So, the guy who stole it, he's probably in a country where there's no extradition treaty. That's even if we even find the guy. And he probably bought a Ferrari with your money and it's gone.
It's gone. So that's it for part 1 of the IRS Dirty Dozen tax scams. You heard it from Joey Boy. Be proactive. Fix it before they get you. So that's it for this show. Tune back in part 2, Dirty Dozen, number 7 through 12. You know the drill. Click to subscribe. Stay up to date. Don't miss anything else from Joey Boy or any other topics we cover. And as always, we challenge you today to take action to change the world and invest in yourself.